The clock's run out. We're on. Welcome to the programme. It's our birthday. Happy birthday to us.
Happy birthday.
We have to pay for that, so that's not good.
It's only 2 words.
That's true.
And of rugby league.
5 years of and rugby league. 5 years of podcast, and much like rugby league, they said it would never last, but somehow it has.
We have cake.
There's cake. We've got a magazine. We've got a T-shirt. This is an actual player's shirt, James.
Yeah, this was Ben Crooks's pride shirt for the Keith the Cougars fixture this season, which I was lent for and I've borrowed for the parade at Manchester on Saturday.
Did it remain dry in Manchester?
The event did in climate terms,
but tears were shed.
but no, it was more beverage terms. Yeah, there was plenty drunk, I think, but it was.
Was that you?
No, it wasn't me. I'm not a big drinker. Stephen always makes up for me. But what an amazing event! It's only the second Pride event I've ever been to. I've been to Leeds and I've been to Manchester now, but just thousands and thousands and thousands of people line the street. And
I've left the flags over there. We'll have to wave them in a bit.
Yeah, no, really, it was really, really good. So it was, and Salford were there as well.
Yes, I saw that they had a van.
Yeah, so well done to Salford for being there. I think they've been there a few times, but yeah, it was a great event. And people who've never been to one, it's a really family-friendly event. It's not just gay people that go to the event, and that might seem a bit stupid, but when I first went to the first Pride event, I was surprised myself.
Right.
You know how inclusive it was.
Well, you're making a political statement in many respects by supporting it, which is great.
I saw there was a giant Pikachu. I mean, that's good. I also
that's
saw
gone straight over your head.
It has.
I
the
have no idea
big yellow
what
Pokemon thing with a pride flag on. That I enjoyed the photo of that. I also saw a photo of, I don't know which float was going past, but there's a street called Camp Street in Manchester, which I thought was, I didn't know if they knew in advance. Or
there is a street, in fact we walked past that and I pointed it out to Stephen and said, do you want your photo taken with it? No, I don't think.
That's amazing.
So weren't you on the float?
So we were on the float, we were on the Keith the Cougars float. There was Ryan and Carrie, the two owners of Keithley, and Junior Sow, Jake Webster, Kyle Trout's partner who plays for Sheffield Eagles women's team.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it was a really good event. Honestly, it was a really good event. It stayed dry for the parade, which was good. But for anybody who's never been, I would encourage you to just go and see it. It's impressive. And from our point of view, we only saw a snapshot of it because we were in the parade.
So the next thing we need to get on is the West Indian Carnival.
Yeah.
So what was it? 2 million people? It either passed through or were involved, or
Wow.
No Leeds Rhinos float there.
well,
Why not?
we'll get a float.
Oh, we did have a message last week. Jason Robinson's not from wherever we said he was from. I'm not going to go back to it now.
It's from Hales.
Did we say he was from Chapeltown or something?
Well,
we've got to make sure we get the corrections in before, while the people...
He grew up in Chapeltown, but he couldn't play.
Jason Robinson was not from Chapeltown, he was from Beeston, says Paul,
Right.
and lived on Rowland Road, about a 10-minute quick walk from Hunslet Boys Club. About 5 minutes for Jason.
Well, when he opened the World Cup for Jamaica at Chapeltown Cougars, he said, I grew up around here and I wish I'd had this facility when I was growing up. So he went to Hunslet to further his rugby league career. It may well be that he lived in both.
He's one of those people as well, I've noticed, who don't seem to have a very strong Leeds accent now. He's moved over to... Is he going to play? He could play in the World Cup. I could do with him.
Which World Cup?
Yeah. It's Kevin Sinfield's fault. I don't know if you noticed.
Blame culture.
Yeah.
Perfect scapegoat.
4020 Live. Proud of Cougars. That's what we're supporting today. Happy birthday, says Tony. Followed you from the days of Radio Yorkshire. Great to see your show is still going strong. Well, not sure about that. Greetings, says Squidris Elba. Great name. And he says, I think happy birthday in Welsh, but I'm not going to attempt it because I'll upset all our Welsh listener and viewer. So apologies for that.
Yes, aren't we big in Poland or something?
Yeah, the episode we did with Jodie was the episode itself, not just the podcast itself, but the actual episode Jodie was on was rated as the 12th biggest episode of a rugby podcast in Mexico, which is something even more than we've ever done. We're still popular in Kazakhstan now, so
Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan we're popular in. Don't know about our listening figures in Russia. Don't know about those at the moment, but we are popular in Kazakhstan. So that is good news. Where do we start? What's happened? What's happening? What's going on in the world of rugby league that we can possibly talk about on this Tuesday afternoon? It's good job we've moved it to Tuesday.
I don't think I've ever been more mystified.
But I think just the link to go back to the Pride shirt and to make this a Pride event, but clearly there's been a big story today around Marcus Griffiths and the abuse he's received following Sunday's game, online homophobic abuse, and sadly, speaking from personal experience, that's all too common, and certainly was all too common when I refereed, and that was one of the reasons why I spoke publicly about it when I did back in 2021, to try and to actually reduce it, and it did reduce it at the games. There was a bar one experience, I think that was really it, but online still used to get homophobic abuse. And when people sort of say, oh, why do you still have Pride events, why do people even speak about being gay and all that, is it really relevant? Well, unfortunately, situations like that show that it's still relevant, and actually good on Marcus for making it public, because there's so many messages that he will have received in the past and not just the same as I have, and lots of other people will have online, and just because it's online shouldn't diminish it in any way. So the events that Keighley and Salford did at the weekend, and other clubs in the past, and I think actually York and Newcastle were involved in another Pride event this weekend up in Newcastle, a repeat of what they did at York earlier on in the year. So I just think that's unfortunately the reason why it still remains relevant today, and irrespective of whether a decision was right or wrong, shouldn't matter. Well,
again, he's tweeted a particular abusive conversation that it's not a conversation, it's a
it's very one-sided conversation.
Yeah,
a rant
that somebody sent, and the only way of identifying that person is through Twitter themselves. So the first obligation has to be that if they are serious about policing their social media site.
I think, in fairness to Twitter, I think this was Instagram, but yeah, he should report it through Instagram.
Yeah. And so yes, clubs have a responsibility. If it's a named person that clearly is affiliated to that club as a fan, they need to take action. The game also needs to take action against that person. But in this instance, where they're almost unidentifiable, then it's the social media platform that has to take action. It'd be very disappointing if they don't.
Yeah, I mean, it never ceased to amaze me that actually some people were even prepared to put their name to it and abuse me, particularly through Facebook, by putting their name to it. I even had a friend request from somebody this week that has abused me online. It's just insane.
So where does the hypocrisy begin and end, and where does the blame begin and end? Because we were talking about that before coming on air, and clearly one of the reasons this has happened is because clips of the game with contentious moments, allegedly, in it, or
clips are increasingly finding their way on social media.
Where have the clips come from?
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that there's referees' audio on at least one of the clips, which means that's come from...
It's come from somebody with access to Opta, basically.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's through a club or any other means.
So that needs to be... it's all very well the RFL coming out saying we
that's very difficult to police, by the way.
But that's an investigation that needs to be made. Then what does the role of those people that are putting up the clips there to gain a reaction from their audience? Where does that responsibility begin and end, and how do you police that?
Well, we know what that's all about. That's to gain clicks, to gain comments, to gain traction on social media. But I mean, it's just nonsense.
But so again, how do you police that? Because you're not putting it up there and saying we're writing a 500-word article about the reasons behind this decision. What we're doing is saying there's a clip, instantaneous judgment, somebody's got something wrong, aren't they crap? Well, does their media accreditation need to be looked at if the governing body is serious about and this isn't aimed at any particular outlet, I'm just saying
good choice of words there.
It's very, very easy for a governing body to issue a statement saying we condemn. What can we do about it?
No, you're absolutely right to ask that question, and I mean there are certain things that are easier to deal with than others. So, coaches' comments criticising referees publicly, right? That's a breach of operational rules.
But on that one, so there's a major incident in a game that may or may not have come late in the game and been an issue of determining who may or may not have won that game. In this case, it didn't, but let's assume it does. It would be naive to think that any member of the media that wasn't worth their salt would ask the coach their opinion of that incident. Now, if you report the coach's reply to that, and the coach is measured in his response and has had a chance to make, because all the coaches have footage next to them, and has talked to people, and it may well be that somebody has made a genuine mistake. I'm not sure you can blame the coach's comments as the initial starting point for all of this. They have been asked the question, and the media have to ask that question. That is a valid news.
Yes, the way in which comments are made, isn't it? Or we've seen other games and on other occasions where it's, you know.
Well, Ricky Stewart's done it this round.
And in fairness, you know, Paul Rowley's comments the other week, that was not done with respect at all.
No.
That got
so I think
you've got
you know, coaches commenting on referees, you know, that in itself I don't think is an issue. It's how you comment,
and it shouldn't be an excuse to open the floodgates for anybody then to have a pop at a referee online.
But people putting clips out from single angles, determining that a wrong decision has been made in order to get a response, the Pavlovian extension of that response then becomes abuse of the referee. How do you stop that? Do the media have some responsibility?
If some of the same journalists are then, you know, tweeting today about the, you know, about the absurdity of the abuse, but actually they play a part in it.
I've been told off. I'm assuming you've been told off, Phil, for things we've said on this podcast, which I don't think have been unfair comments. Or if they have been,
I think there's a difference between opinion and, you know, opinion is exactly that. As a famous comedian once said, opinion is like arseholes, everybody has one.
The rectums of Wigan, we're back to that.
But I think you have to be able to justify your opinion, and people don't have to agree with your opinion, but you have to make as intellectual a case as you can as to why you have that stance on that. Putting up a clip and going, well, you judge, but clearly a mistake's been made.
Clubs frequently criticise referees' decisions in play when they do their live social media.
Yeah.
Has any club been sanctioned for that criticism?
And if they have,
it's not been publicly announced.
That's the bit that's missing.
When players during televised games criticise referees' decisions, have any of them been sanctioned for those? And again, have they been sanctioned publicly? When any members of the media have called out match officials, referees, touch judges, timekeepers, whatever, have they been sanctioned for not an opinion, for direct
it's abuse,
calling out abuse, saying someone is not on the level? That's the word I'll use. No, they haven't, have they? Because they still, you can see them at games, you can see them everywhere. So there's no accountability. Anyone can do whatever they want, and you know, we've got a great collective amnesia in rugby league about some people involved and things they've done in the past, and they're allowed to do whatever they want, and it's open season. So why then? No, we can't start now. We've got to go back and.
Well, unless they have been sanctioned, it's not been publicised. But then why sanction in the first place? Because one of the reasons for sanctioning is to stop other people from doing it. And we've discussed before on this podcast this year about players and criticism on social media. And I went away and checked the operational rules, and actually they're not breaching operational rules as it currently stands. But if they're not questioning the integrity of the match official, which I don't agree. I think that needs changing. I don't think it's right that players should be questioning decisions on social media. There's if they want to question decisions and get answers to decisions, there's a process that they can go through behind the scenes. That doesn't do the game, in my view, any good. That's not to say that match officials are above criticism. No. They're not. No. But as an active player in a competition, I don't see what that adds to the competition. If I, as an active referee, and I said this before, but if I as an active referee started making similar comments on social media about players during their performances of live games, I'm pretty damn sure action would have been taken against me.
Did any media outlet put a clip of a player of a club dropping a ball with the line open and saying...
When we accept our accreditation at the start of the year, we have to agree to the terms and conditions, which people probably don't read. But I'm sure when I've read them before, there are... it's interesting because you're not really supposed to take pictures within the stadium when the game's on and such, because that's photographers and they pay for the right to do that or whatever. But everyone does, because that's what everyone does these days. But I'm fairly sure you're not supposed to take clips of matches and put them out because you're not a rights holder. You know, otherwise I could just make videos every week of here's the best tries in Super League this week. I'm going to put them on the internet and monetize it and make 4 pence myself, because then it's open season. I can do that. Well, I can't do that, can I? So what's the difference between me putting out here's a great clip of, and you know what, I probably have used clips of something in the past, although it's probably tries rather than when I put a clip of Danica scoring a try for Leeds against Wakefield. Now, Forty20 is not the rights holder of the Women's Super League. I was doing commentary of the game for the club, so it's murky. I probably should have done it, but I did because I'm a rebel. But you know,
if you're gonna have a condemnatory statement, there has to be action that backs it up, and if that means an investigation into how clips have been allowed to be used, and that has that contravenes whatever the agreement is or whoever the rights holder is, that has to be taken into account when some form of punishment is meted out. Now, whether that's fine or accreditation withheld or
especially
whatever.
when we're moaning about whatever Sky are or aren't going to pay for the TV rights, if we're undermining them by putting our own clips on.
We've seen this as well. I mean, I remember talking about a club doctor this season posting footage online of incidents of alleged foul play and inaction by match officials, and I said at the time I thought that was wholly inappropriate, and that for me should have been sanctioned.
I agree. I also think that there needs to be a look for agencies that purport to be using news stories, pandering to the lowest common denominator, and they're going to say, oh, it's all about the number of people and this is what people want. Sometimes what people want is what you give them, and I think there does need to be some kind of standards driven look at whether that is appropriate content, which is not easy for one particular outlet to make that decision. The whole of the media need to be briefed on what is and isn't acceptable in terms of, we laugh about it. Words like legend and star and exclusive are all ridiculously overused, and to the point where they don't mean anything. So clubs are now signing players from the NRL who we are told are big stars, and like you look at their record and you go, well, they're not, because they've only played 25 games and they actually can't get into their current team at the moment, and their current team is one of the lower ranked teams. So do we need to, even as a society, to be reining in this desire to shout loud but with no substance behind it?
Well, I agree. It's just how you change things, and to take it away from referees a little bit, because I'm conscious that it shouldn't just be about referees, because Andy Lass, that was discussed only a few weeks ago, and the abuse he'd received from his own supporters. It's just ridiculous.
Well, and a lot of so-called fans who jump on a bandwagon that it's all the referee's fault. Also, if you look through their history of tweets, are abusive even to their own players, more than the opposition players. They're, why have we signed them? He's rubbish, or the recruitment at our club is awful. They're not good enough to put on the shirt. It's all that thin end of the same wedge. Yeah.
I'm not sure that in the behaviour and standards section of the terms and conditions for media accredited people, would you say respect and recognise the roles played by all matchday staff and volunteers would then say you can't really call the timekeeper?
It needs to be more specific.
Where appropriate attire at all times, club replica jerseys must not be worn in any media area.
Unless you represent a club, in which case it's fine.
Not be under the influence of alcohol or any substance. I've seen people drinking beer in mix zones.
Not wrestling in mixed zones, weren't they?
They were. It was great. Oh, we've got to talk about that later. Not misuse their access that their accreditation provides by seeking autographs, photographs, memorabilia requests, etc. with players or coaches. Apart from Scully was allowed to do that because he's in the Hall of Fame.
I just think if you have standards, apply them. If you don't have standards, write them in, because this is becoming now an issue that you cannot just say we condemn it.
Yeah, we've seen it before. I saw it was an active match for sure, and it's like anything. It's like Premier League football. If you allow it to slip, it will slip and slip and slip. So
it has.
everybody's trying to define culture because it's a word again that is overused, but without anybody saying what it is. One of it is you set your standards and you stick to them, and that doesn't happen in a lot of cases. And here, I don't know if journalistic standards are slipping, but I do think that an episode like this means every media outlet should look at their output and say, are we doing right by ourselves to be credible and the sport that we purport to cover?
I mean, just to widen the subject a little bit, if we go into some of the comments perhaps that have come in, is just without wishing to publicise another podcast, but I did listen to another Rugby League podcast this week.
Depends who it is.
It was
some we like and some we
the Super League's podcast.
Oh, it's the official one. That's one. We can't say anything bad.
And Ryan Briley's interview was. I mean, they have some really good interviews on there. But Ryan Briley's interview was really enlightening and talking about the way in which he was treated at Toronto. By staff involved there, and for me, that is totally unacceptable in any walk of life, and that shouldn't be accepted as the norm. To be mistreated in the way he was, and basically cast adrift and if we mistreat him, he'll hopefully leave because he's got a 2-year contract. I mean, that's just really, really poor form.
You can't do
that. And speaking to people in the way in which he said he was spoken to by coaching staff, for me is totally unacceptable. And we're talking about people sort of on the fringe, if you like, fans and journalists. I'm talking about now people actually in the game, directly employed within the sport, within clubs. That's unacceptable behaviour in 2023.
It is part of our problem then, and people. I know some people aren't going to like what I'm going to say here, so I'm trying to work out how to say it. And we are the most woke Rugby League podcast with. I'm fairly sure. I'm fairly sure we are. Is one of the problems in Rugby League, and this goes back to the head injuries. It goes back to shoulder charges. It goes back to everything. That the game's gone soft, and that era of when it was hard and they're all hard men and blah blah blah. A, probably never existed really, but B, that mythology we've built up. If we admit any kind of weakness or softness, then it goes against what we are. We are hard. We are whatever Rugby League stood for, and probably isn't and hasn't been for a long time.
I don't know. Things change in over time. Don't they? Everything changes over time, and what's considered to be hard.
I don't know. In terms of the way management may behave, which may reflect on the comments somebody else has said in, which we can't.
I think you still see archaic forms of coaching. I've seen it firsthand. For me, that shouldn't have a place in the way in which any form of work, that shouldn't, just because you work in Rugby League and you work in sport and you're a bloke and you should be macho and all the rest of it, and you should be able to take it. Well, that's nonsense.
Now you said that, it reminds me about a kids' final was recently where one of the coaches was behaving in that form, and you're thinking, what?
I've not seen the film, but I've seen the clip. With goodness me, what's the football film called? We talked about the other week.
Mike Bassett again.
Mike Bassett. It's funny. It's funny, but actually some of that still goes on. And it really shouldn't. I just speak. That listening to Ryan Briley's story for me, as just that again, as I said, is on a sort of a wider topic of generally and how we deal with each other as a society. Really, that for me, it should not be acceptable and should not be considered, as it was in the podcast by Ryan and by Kyler Moore, that actually that's the standard. That's what we expect. That shouldn't be. That's we should be better than
that. Some comments. Liz, I hope the RFL fine. Even I can't speak. It's not good, is it? Your man. What did he say on Twitter? Did he say something about your Leeds? Your play deleted his tweet, but now the RFL.
Samley.
Yeah, what did he say?
He said referees just need to be accountable.
No, he didn't say the crap or anything.
But they are accountable. I mean, referees the appointments are influenced each week by performances on field, whether people notice that or not. But they are.
It's probably the tamest tweet anyone's said about a referee. But at least he deleted it. So, but the RFL are going to look into it. Well, if they do sanction him for that, then there's a lot to go back on that they could easily say. Well, because we've seen in football in the past where a player gets a move to a big club and the fans of that club don't like it, so they'll dig through his old tweets, find something he said when he was 16 or 17 which he shouldn't have said, and they get fined and banned for things they've said in the past. So if we are going open season on players and what they've tweeted, then there's a lot of people going to be in a lot of trouble. So
he just
can't wait for that.
needs to be told that referees are accountable.
Teddy Ruxby. Anyone employed in Rugby League who publicly criticise referees, spoken or in written form, should be fined and or suspended. I'm going to suspend you from the podcast. It's not even my podcast.
Why? What did I say?
I don't know. Ban everyone. Ban everyone. It's just going to be me on my own. Given that Warrington won, does this mean the end of Warrington Corner? No, we'll find something to criticise Warrington about. Kevin says, seems respect for the referee in Rugby League is diminishing. Is that just again, it's a general in the world at large?
Rugby League. I think post-pandemic, where we all thought everybody would come together because we'd all missed each other and community would be reignited, the absolute opposite has happened.
Yeah, I've written about it in the magazine, haven't I, in the last few months about other sports and the abuse that's been received, not just towards referees as well, but as a society, that's the way we're heading, unfortunately.
All good points, says Tim, regarding the responsibilities of players, coaches, media and social media users. Quick question, have the RFL concluded their investigation into running of the referees department? No.
Well, again, that is all part of, if abuse is an issue, where does it begin and end?
Karen also says, agree Rich, the game's changed massively, some for the better, some not, but that's everything, isn't it? Nothing is the same as it was. Are there enough referees though for them to be held accountable, as in if they keep having shockers? You know, we should mark them out of 10, you know what they do to the players? Mark the referees out of 10.
No, there is a challenge around the level of experience, as we've discussed before. Robert Hicks finished, he was on the podcast today. You know, he refereed over 300 odd games in Super League, as did I. That's over 600 and odd, nearly 700 games of Super League experience refereeing, whether you think we're any good or not. Facts are, you've lost 2 referees with over 300 and odd games each in terms of experience.
And Marcus is almost at the beginning of his journey by comparison.
He's probably refereed in Super League maybe 3 years, something like that. I'm guessing maybe a little bit more. But
I think the other thing is, if we are going to get video referees at every game, then you might have to come out of retirement, because the worry would be that you are going to need some pretty experienced people to act in that capacity. It's not just I played the game, therefore I can be a video referee.
One of the effects is if they don't use active officials, if they want to use active officials as video referees, as has generally been the want, then it means that those active officials that are full-time referees who touch judge as well as video referee, they won't probably touch judge anymore, which then means you're relying on just a part-time group of match officials to touch judge Super League. I mean, people have their own views on touch judges, but a lot of that is through ignorance, because most people don't appreciate the role of a touch judge and the level of input they give. And I think there's a big education piece the RFL could do there, similar to what the VAR have done this year with football, is actually to show people, to release some of that audio to the public, to show the level of input that touch judges give and the support that they give to the on-field officials. So you're right, if they don't start using sort of retired or off-field people to video referee, then it will have a greater impact. But they have lost some experience for various reasons.
To spread the matches over a weekend, because otherwise, if you've got 4 games on a Friday, and they've all got video refs, you are going to struggle to have enough personnel.
I think they can still manage it by having active officials as video referees, but it will potentially have a knock-on effect for them not then touch judging.
Does that mean we'll get rid of the in-goal judges then?
The in-goal judges would go, yeah. So
they can't tell you if it's a drop goal or not. So.
But there was a clip going on, I think Huddersfield did the rounds on that, didn't they? From probably about 10 years ago.
Danny Brough dropping a goal against St Helens that wasn't given.
Well, and 2 camera angles there, both directly behind the post, one at either end. And actually, they tell you probably slightly different stories. But what you can't determine from that is at which point the ball is directly above or in front or behind the posts. And one of the problems there is that the posts are relatively short at Huddersfield. So even with extra camera angles, you can't always tell. So with a video referee, I don't think under next season's situation, I don't think it would have helped, because I don't imagine under that production they would have cameras directly behind the post. I suspect they would probably just have corner angles. So I don't think there would have been an angle to determine it, because the footage is relatively inconclusive, and I think you have to rely on somebody who's behind the posts in a great position to make that decision.
Taller posts, different coloured balls,
nets.
You
could have flashing lights like I think they have in the NRL and all sorts,
cricket,
and the ball goes
like
through.
The cricket, when it hits
in ice hockey, they have someone behind the goal who puts a light on if the puck crosses the line. That's their job.
Yeah, goal line technology.
Control the drop goals.
Doing IMG's job from here.
Yeah. All those. Well, we've got to slag off IMG next, haven't we? Because they're rubbish.
Oh.
Carl Kirkpatrick was a good referee, says Kevin. Don't ask Wakefield supporters about that, especially the woman with the umbrella chasing him off the pitch. At least they're not chasing Marcus Griffiths off the pitch with an umbrella. So
I have to say, having been at that game, it was a really difficult game to referee. It had a cup tie atmosphere to it because
massive crowd and everything. Yeah.
Not as massive as they would have liked, but clearly almost last chance saloon for both teams. There was something like 12 penalties and 10 set restarts, so that's 22 stoppages in 80 minutes. So it became increasingly fractious. It was a tough game to control, and both sides have to take a relative degree of responsibility for that. But whatever incidents you show on social media are not the only incidents that determine the outcome of that game. It can't possibly be that way.
And I've seen clips that are on there, and you read some of the comments that people are talking about potential forward passes. They've never seen forward passes in the memory of man. Literally, they must be watching something else. And then there was a try that Huddersfield scored that Leeds complained about. I have no idea why, because he wasn't held. The ball carrying arm isn't down, and it's clearly a try.
Entitled.
Video ref or no video referee, it's clearly a try. So,
but it's how you respond to those decisions. If you feel there's been a great sense of injustice, the onus is still on you to be a disciplined team to overcome that.
Yeah.
And if both teams hadn't performed relatively poorly this season over the length of the season, that game wouldn't have been a must-win game.
Yeah.
So there's an element of responsibility that each club has to take for the way a game.
I mean, I go back with something.
And you wrote about it in your cup final piece. How do you referee it? Well, it's
down to the players.
It depends on how the players play it.
Yeah. By and large, it's down to the players.
And it was a really fractious game yesterday.
And you could see that in the Catalan-Wigan game. If I knew the result when I was watching it, and so I didn't watch the second half. It was an awful game to watch and an awful game to referee.
An awful pitch.
Yeah, on an awful pitch. I just felt sorry for Liam because I've had games like that, particularly at Catalan before, where you're almost you don't know which tactic to take to adopt in order to try and get the best out of the game that you can possibly get. Because no matter what you do, it seems to add levels of frustration. So a lot of that, as I've said, it just goes back to the players and the coach's responsibility to maintain control and discipline.
So Leeds scored no second half points in this match.
No, and Huddersfield scored 3.
And it's all down to this one drop goal
Which was
Leeds lost.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I would just say there, just in defence on Rowan Smith, he didn't say that was the reason why they lost.
No, he didn't.
And so for people to extrapolate that,
he was asked
nonsense.
a direct question about that incident.
Yeah, and I don't think, look, his comments, I don't think were unacceptable.
No, there were no way, they weren't abusive, they didn't blame the match official, and he was clearly you can read any situation you want to read. If you looked at the Huddersfield players at the moment that drop goal went over, they didn't automatically assume that they needed to run back into their own half, because some of them stood on the 20-metre line because they thought it had missed. Well, Rowan Smith commenting on that is not abuse. But
he did comment about the ruck though, and it being a potential lottery.
He only talks about that every week.
I was going to say he talks about that every other week at least. Yeah.
It's a lottery.
Do you think Six again has got something to answer for?
Well, we've discussed it before.
Because the one thing about penalties, that are given for things like foul play, is that they're virtually incontrovertible. You've either tackled somebody high or you haven't, and whether it comes off the ball or whether there's malice involved, as a match official, you virtually have a situation of black and white. A head has been hit, and that's no longer right. There is an element of interpretation in the Six again that nobody on the terraces can fully understand, and always think that their club isn't getting the rub of the green.
Yeah, but what I would say to that is that was exactly the same when it was penalties, because there's an element of interpretation to how you officiate the ruck, whether you decide to penalise something or give a 6 again, there's an element of discretion in there. To some are more discretionary than others. Some are almost mandatory, particularly when that ball comes out and you can't play on. You're forced to give a decision. But people were still just as baffled when the referee gave a penalty. Now, the referee could give a signal, so he could signal a leg pull, he could signal hand on ball. He can't signal that anymore. So people at least now don't know why he's given it.
Yeah.
So I think there's an element of that around it. But even if when you give a signal, people will disagree with the decision anyway. So
it's the whole concept of what constitutes laying on more than anything.
But that just for me just comes back to education, to try and educate the public, and the more engagement that you do with the public to try and demonstrate why something is given or why something isn't given, then you will help people to understand. And if people don't understand, then they get confused and then they get frustrated. So it all comes back to education, and there being a role, in my view, for somebody who understands the laws to explain to the public why decisions are given or not given.
And that's another job you've just given yourself.
Yeah.
On Rod Studd's programme, the RFL did last year.
But what it doesn't want to end up being, though, it doesn't want to end up being like a fess up every week.
No.
Oh, we got that wrong, we got this wrong. Or we got,
does it want to be a focus on that?
No.
The focus has to be on either the great entertaining play that we've witnessed, or the club's responsibility for not winning the games.
And one of the things around the ruck, which Rowan Smith referenced in his comments, was about the play of the ball and players not playing the ball. And that has been around ever since I've been a referee. And our play of the balls are not good enough. I accept that. They're not as good as the NRL in terms of the standard. But to try and change that is unpicking a generation or more of players that have never played the ball with the foot.
And you can't do it during the season either.
And we talk about these concussion trials and academy games and stuff, to then try and rectify that in a 6-week pre-season leading into games. And I know exactly what would happen. You'd end up giving a load of penalties early doors in the first few rounds, not playing the ball correctly, and then the public will be up in arms, the TV will be up in arms, and then the referees have to back down, and it's yet again the referees have backed off something. Well, if you really want to fix something, then stick at it, and stick at it all year, and accept that you're going to have to tolerate a load of penalties and a load of pain and discomfort early doors, and actually also accept that the referee's going to miss some, because there's probably 300 play the balls in a game, and it's yet another decision that the referee has to make from about 12 metres away, considering the angle, whether that player touches that ball with the foot, or if you make it grey and say he has to make an attempt, then what is the intention or the attempt that's the range of acceptability. So it is an absolute minefield. It's not an easy fix. I agree, if you fixed it though, it would give greater stability to that ruck, slow the ruck down a little bit and give greater control and tidy the ruck up. But
and what we don't realise here, symptomatically we've gone back and said, well, here's the problem that's happened, but we have done nothing about it, so here's where we are now. And that's exactly what we were talking about in the start. And everything will be like scrums, where it's completely pointless. Just get the big people out of the way for a bit, because no one puts them in the middle row anymore. Andrew says, after months of promoting the Giants Rhinos game with cheap tickets and only getting 6,621, or at least Huddersfield gave in attendance, it is a disgrace. What more can be done to get people to our games? I don't know. What can Huddersfield do? Huddersfield have had a team which have contended. They've won the League Leaders' Shield. They've been to Wembley. And whatever they do, because they've got... is this year the cheap season ticket year, or is it next year? Because they always go back to that.
I think
£10 for a season
the danger after Sunday is if you've put really cheap tickets on sale and people haven't bought them, what is your next marketing strategy? You've almost reached the end of an avenue there. I don't know the club well enough to know how they interact with their community. I don't know how active their foundation is. I don't know whether they put on enough around a game, whether they're able to, because clearly they're tenants in the stadium. So Sunday afternoon there was a fan zone. I could see that. I didn't get to see what was in it, but there's obviously an effort to put something extra on. Now, whether they would be able to play a women's game before or a reserve, they probably aren't, because of the constrictions they've got. Huddersfield Town played on the Saturday, I think, didn't they?
So, they lost 2.
So again, there wouldn't be overuse of the pitch. So they're limited, I think, in what they can do. But it does start with going back into your community for me, and I don't know how many junior clubs there are in and around the Huddersfield area. I don't know what sort of offer the club make to get those kids to bring their parents, but to me that's a better way of trying to do it than just offering cheap tickets.
Well, I was going to mention the 100, but I don't need to mention the 100 because we've got it staring in our faces at Lee, because Lee have done it. Lee have somehow managed with bands in the stand, and again, it's not their facility, is it? They don't own the Lee Sports Village, but they've got a stand where they can put a band in the corner or
with
whatever.
their relationship with the local council or the stadium operatives. That may have to be.
But they're putting money in as well.
They're
It's not
trying
just
to
that,
do
is it?
something. They're trying things other than come and watch a game for a £5 or whatever the price were.
I mean, I don't know whether they have juniors playing it before or after at half time, and I think by getting a load of juniors on your pitch, you get a parent along with a free ticket, and then they might enjoy it. They might come again. There might be an incentive where they can get a cheaper ticket to the next game, and then pay, and then hopefully you might win some of those over. But it's like going back to those community clubs and engaging with the community clubs to get them involved.
That's, I think, how it starts for successful clubs. I mean, I think they gave away a couple of heritage certificates at half time, so there was an acknowledgement of. But again, without going back to a debate that we had about Warrington and Warrington not knowing their identity because either the Wire or the Wolves, there is still an element of the Huddersfield fans that shout fart out.
I mean, that's just so outdated in my
opinion.
And
again, what marketing hasn't worked to get them to be Giants. So they've got the cowbell now, which is great. Whether
is it?
Well, no, but it's their identity.
It is, unfortunately.
Your identity is you've got a cowbell.
No, but
they've got something.
Do Giants wear cowbells?
Who knows?
I know what you mean. But it's not an easy answer, is it? There's no single solution
to be honest,
it.
If there was, they would have done
exactly.
it.
Maybe the answer is just there aren't enough people in Huddersfield who are interested or will be interested at all. And why that is, I don't know.
They spend their salary cap to the full. I think there was a post today because they've signed Jack Murchie, saying it's something like the 21st new signing in the last 2 years. So they're always trying to improve their squad. It's not like, with the greatest respect to Wakefield, come and watch a team that we already know might struggle to compete because we haven't spent the same as everybody else. And that's part of the DNA of Wakefield. You accept that. Huddersfield spend. It won't have been cheap to go and get Ian Watson as the coach.
They were in a Challenge Cup final last year. I mean,
so there's not a lot. There's not a lot more they can do as a club. Maybe that is the limit of the interest in rugby league. In Happy Birthday, the birthplace of the town.
My view as well on the stadium is too big. And actually, if you have a smaller stadium like League, where you get 8,000 in what is maybe a 12,000 capacity stadium, that generates such a better atmosphere.
There was talk of that. Was it a couple of years ago that there was a big debate between Ken Davey and the owners of Huddersfield Town that there was some issue about needing to build a 12,000 capacity stadium in or around Laund Hill where the juniors and reserves play, and the Giants moving out and into that stadium.
Can't see that happening.
But does a town the size of Huddersfield need two?
No,
clearly
not.
No. So what can they do? What? Maybe the answer is people aren't interested, and we're looking back through history. Everyone uses Bradford as an example, but Bradford had that specific period of success, which is more recent than everyone else's. When was Huddersfield's period of success? The 1910s or something.
Yeah, team of all talents.
So no one's around who remembers them. There's no relevance of them to today.
But to be fair,
you've had a reasonable number of League Leaders Shield they did not get, and Challenge Cup final been to a few times.
But that didn't get people in.
No, but
cheap tickets haven't got people in. So maybe they just aren't people who care.
Their corporate was sold out on Sunday, so that as an income generator is working. They seem to sell, relatively speaking, a fair amount of replica jerseys. A lot of their fans turn up wearing the shirt. So the fans they've got are very loyal.
Yeah, it's not a knock on the people who are there, is it? It's how can they get more of them, and maybe they just don't exist. I don't know what, because as you say, they've been to the Challenge Cup final, they've won League Leaders Shields, and it has no effect.
I think
internationals have played there all the time.
It has to come back to children.
Yeah.
All clubs, just children either through school or through community clubs, and getting them involved at a young age, and then getting their parents piggybacking on that, and then hopefully coming back.
Kevin said that kids bring friends and family and spend money on kids.
But you have to have an offer for kids as well.
And that's why
going to a game. It's not just
no.
It's
And
not
that's
enough
why
for
the fan zone is important. But was there stuff there for kids, or what? It's great to have street food and all that.
There has to be somewhere that's accessible that's during a game as well. For me, speaking as a parent, I've got a 2-year-old, so he's too young at the moment. But when he gets to an age where he might want to go, he won't necessarily want to sit for 45 minutes and watch. I have no idea where he wants to go.
But this is important.
Where I can get a free ticket, probably.
Where are you going to? Where are you going to?
What is it about
Or
this program?
a cheap ticket.
This program of freeloaders. What's going on?
Indoctrinate him or ruin the rest of his life by giving him the wrong team to support.
I've no idea.
We're not too far away from going bit of hospitality, and it's.
Yeah.
Teddy says Huddersfield couldn't get a big crowd if they were free pints served by Margot Robbie in a Barbie outfit. Bit harsh, but true. So thanks for that, Teddy. What can you do if you've tried everything and then you're right? Cheap tickets is the last.
Cheap tickets, you should never go down that road because you're actually devaluing your product, and it's very hard then to say, "Do come and watch our team because we're a bit special." Yeah, but if you're that special, why can I get in here for a £5?
Because the ground was a sellout for England-Ireland in the World Cup in 2013, which was a foregone conclusion of a game.
24,000, yeah.
So, and obviously that's not all people from Huddersfield who were there.
But again,
it sold well for the England-New Zealand test
without knowing the way the club operate, I'm sure they would have been clever enough to try and get the database of people that turned up at that game and see who was in at least an HD postcode or surrounding, and try and make them an offer to come to again. I'm sure
there's an incentive as well with the football season ticket holders, whether you can do a piggyback off the existing football.
Not the way they're playing it.
Well,
Neil Warnock,
Warnock,
Warnock and Ian Watson swapping jobs for a week.
That was never going to work. Neil Warnock staying there, by the way.
No,
that's going totally off subject. But
really? On the basis of
he saved them, therefore leave.
Yeah.
Don't stay because you've done your job. That was my view.
I'm still waiting for him to the Sheffield Wednesday.
I'm not saying it's all Neil Warnock, by the way. I don't know enough about Huddersfield Town or football for that matter. But
Colin, me and Batesy. Oh, great. I don't know what Huddersfield can do. Maybe they're just interested, but
that's why IMG exists, isn't it, as well, to help these clubs
but some
knowledge
people want
share.
to bin them off already because we didn't get millions of pounds more from Sky, which we were never going to get because we've been resting on our laurels for the last.
But IMG are in in it for the long haul, aren't they? They're not in it for a quick buck to walk away in 2 years.
The thing is, they said, and we agreed with them, that coming out of the pandemic era and the shutdown, excuse me, we had to have change. Everybody talked about change. There needs to be change for broadcasters to be, upping their offer, for IMG to be coming in and giving them something that they can sell. And we are 2 years into IMG joining, and 3.5 years post-pandemic, nothing has changed.
Whose fault is that?
That's our fault. As a game.
Although, having said that, in terms of the timescales and when things were going to change, things were never going to change as early as this point. But I think
we haven't had a plan of what that change.
But I think the frustration from the outside looking in is that things seem to be taking much longer than they were anticipated to take, and things are taking a different route to what IMG envisaged.
Yeah.
So I think you're still too early at this stage to get an enhanced deal.
It is, but I think if you talk about there is a need for change, I mean, one of the things that Ralph Rimmer said, remember him?
He's doing a good job at the moment.
When we got the government money, we've got this on condition of the fact that there is change. But nobody's outlined what change looks like, or how long it's going to take for change, or what the strategy for change is. And it just feels like it's the same. And then we go, oh, why isn't the broadcaster giving us any more money? Because what did we take to the table to say to the broadcaster? We might say in 3 years' time we're going to have 2 conferences of 8, and we're going to, the idea is to populate these areas, and this is our development plan, and this is how we use your money, and these are the competitions that, the World Club Challenge isn't going to be, it may or may not happen every year, it's now in the calendar, and what Challenge Cup's going to go there, but it's going to look, and we're 2.5 years down that road, and actually we have no idea what that change looks like.
To borrow the phrase from the World Cup, it was about being bold and brave.
Yes.
I haven't seen any of that, and that's not a slight by the way on IMG.
And it doesn't have to start tomorrow.
No. That's the whole game has a responsibility. Yes. If you're going to bring somebody in as a partner, you have to buy into what they are proposing.
And it's the whole game that at the moment is stopping some of that, because they're saying,
cherry pick this and we're
not getting quite as much money. Oh, okay. Well, in that case, we won't drop loot fixtures.
There has to be an acceptance.
You go, well, but they've told you loot fixtures don't work. They can't sell your game with loot fixtures.
There has to be an acceptance within the sport that the only part of the sport that is bringing in any money is the top competition, and that is Super League. I don't know how much the BBC pay for the Challenge Cup or the international, but it's chicken free, it's nothing. So there has to be an acceptance that if IMG, who have experience in these matters,
not experience, are global leaders,
but they don't know as much as I do running Pontefract pylons in Super League, because I'll use them as an example because they don't exist. But I am the archetypal club owner of, you know,
Magic Weekend needs to go, they say, because we need to focus more on making the Challenge Cup final an event. We still haven't heard yet whether we've got a Magic Weekend in 2024, and the likelihood is we probably still will.
What's the Challenge Cup format for next year? Because are we having groups? Are we not having groups?
Yeah,
but still nobody knows it. There's no certainty. There's no set plan where you go to a broadcast and say this is what we are delivering next year for your new TV deal.
We'd like a TV deal to bridge us over to then when this really dynamic.
But 3 years is not really a bridge. It's almost too long, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the bridge was the 2-year deal we've just come
out.
It's long enough to come up with an idea, and then actually we'll row back week by week on this because it'll upset.
But it might also be that the people at Sky would say we can't commit to any more than 3 years because our industry is changing. But what are you actually selling us?
I don't think you would. But what my point was on the length, it's neither too short nor too long.
No, it's a bit of an indiscriminate amount of time.
If it's a 12-month deal, because it's actually we need another 12 months or another 6 months to get all the clubs on board to what we need to deliver, and then we'll come back to you in 6 months and say this is now what we are delivering. Now let's negotiate on this deal. Fair enough. But then, do you do 2 years? But then 3 years is neither one thing nor another for me.
And the other thing is, we haven't actually signed a deal. We've gone into a period of 30 days.
But is that not standard? I don't know. I'm assuming no.
I don't think
or if it has been, then it's never been announced. They just signed the deal and said, here's the deal. We've signed the deal.
You announce the deal when the deal is ready to be announced. Not, we haven't actually signed a deal, but this is the kind of deal that we're going to sign. And we're going to actually talk about the deal. There's a quote in League Express from Rodri Jones saying, we need to do something with our league and decide what it's going to...
What our league looks like going forward is something we need to consider.
No.
It's going to be more akin to a TV channel, perhaps. We can't lose sight of the reason it was created, which was a membership platform for supporters of the game, but the plan is for a lot more content on there. The irony is there's less content on there now than there was last year.
But the thing about that is you can't be deciding now what it's going to be. You need to have as part of your plan what it is and how it fits in.
Do we know what's going to be on there this week? Are they going to show Saints Leeds on Sunday? The Women's Super League semi-final home decider?
I don't know.
Why wasn't Leeds Huddersfield on there on Sunday? Because they showed Leeds Warrington the other week, and
maybe it would have detracted from the huge crowd they were expecting.
Yeah, or
But again, our league, surely that comes under the IMG umbrella.
Yeah, but
they have a plan for
I don't know why you say we need to decide what it's going to be. Surely by now
you should know what it is.
It's going to be a digital season ticket or whatever it's going to be, and we're going to it's going to need to cost £120 a year. How many people would sign up for it? It's like we're almost always trying to bolt the horse behind the cart, which is bizarre.
I tell you what, we're talking about the number of match officials we're going to need to populate the video referee booths next year. I'm concerned about the number of quality broadcasters, but I can say that as a non-quality broadcaster. It's okay holding Sky to ransom, but there's no one else willing to put anywhere near that sort of money in, says Kevin. And Kevin's right. And we can fool ourselves with stories like, DAZN are interested. TNT might come along. And I'm not saying they didn't say how much is your Rugby League, mate, but any of those signing an exclusivity would have been a massive backstep from Sky, which is the established sports partner of everything for the last 30
years by 2026.
Premier League football, the cricket, everything apart from rugby unions.
And Sky know that. But unless you have an offer that genuinely excites an alternative broadcaster, with Sky in a monopoly position, which in effect they are,
and
why would they offer more than they need to?
They've got to do Speedway. They're happy to get rid of that. They got rid of WWE, which they had for longer than we've had to deal with them, going back to the mid-80s.
But they've taken netball, which is, to me, looks like innovative coverage. The 100, whether you like it or not, is a Sky sport. They seem to be doing all right with viewing figures, and grounds are maybe not quite as full this year, but there's certainly plenty of people there.
It's finished now, so it's all right. It's back to normal cricket now.
But I think, you know, our offer seems to be insipid. Bearing in mind this is such an important
Well, that's the thing.
time.
What are we as a sport offering to DAZN or TNT or whoever who are not our principal partners? What do we add to them? Do we add hundreds of thousands of subscribers? Do we add a vibrant product that looks exciting?
We do have a
because
vibrant
we know that
product
the games are
exciting.
great.
Yes.
Look at Wembley, and we look at the whole day, and we think it
wasn't a great week this week.
But ultimately, it comes down to numbers because they're businesses. So
Yes.
it come down to how many subscribers is it going to generate, and how much advertising revenue can we generate from that sport, and that's the crux of the decision.
And the advertising revenue isn't going to change if you stay as you are, because the advertisers deem you are appealing to a certain market sector, and that market sector for them isn't enough for them to advertise. But if you're going to be different, if you're going to take games on the road, whatever it might be.
I mean, more. I would say less concerning than Wembley not selling out for the Challenge Cup final. Which, when did it last sell out for the Challenge Cup final? 85 or something.
Yeah, but maybe again, like Huddersfield, we need to accept that Wembley isn't going to sell out for the Challenge Cup.
Twickenham didn't sell out for an England international this week. It was less than, was it 45,000? They didn't open the top tier.
But again,
that's with all the hype.
You can only have so many friendlies before you actually get to the damn World Cup. Get on with it.
But they have them every year anyway, don't they? The Ultimate Internationals.
Anyway.
You know.
We haven't analysed the game yet.
No,
we're nearly an hour in. Mind you, most of the games.
There's nothing really to say about the TV deal, though, is there? Because it's what we
I just
expect
think it's
it to
disappointing because we didn't offer anything more to get anything more.
What more can we offer?
Well, a foreshortened season.
Get rid of loop fixtures. That is the first thing that most fans would want.
What would you fill that with? Well, maybe an opportunity for more international style games, maybe a shorter format, whatever it might be. But the other thing is, what is the plan going forward? If we've got 12 teams in Super League at the moment, at what point are we looking at 14? Are we looking at 16? What sort of teams are we looking at? What criteria will there be? And, you know, if we can't compare ourselves with the NRL because they've got a different product, but the way they've gone about getting a 17th team and now talking about an 18th team, and they're already saying, well, actually it won't be 18, it'll be 20, and they're already saying to their broadcasters, we've got an event in Las Vegas next year. That's when you go into your broadcast deal and say, we can offer you something different. You know, State of Origin might have only been going since 1980, but what it is now is a huge bargaining chip. But somebody took a risk in 1980 to say, we're going to change the concept, because it's been New South Wales and Queensland for a very long time, but New South Wales win it every year now because they can pick any player that plays in New South Wales, so they've got all the best Queensland players. So we'll trial at one game of the three to change it. You play from where you were born and not. So this isn't going back to Yorkshire, Lancashire, it's somebody saying we need to come up with something different. Well, what are we doing to make our sport look different?
And the idea of expanding the NRL is to go to new markets.
Exactly.
Perth, an extra club in New Zealand, or PNG. So that's where you sell your extra subscriptions. That's where you generate extra revenue. Yeah. That's where it's appealing to a broadcaster. You know, if we keep peddling clubs from the same districts, we're fishing in the same pond.
We're marginalising ourselves.
Absolutely, and that's not disrespectful to any of the existing clubs at all. It's just that we're trying to expand the game.
And the thing about Toronto,
expanding the game is about expanding revenue.
We know all the issues with Toronto, some of which were money issues, which we asked them to pay bonds that no other club was having to pay. They had an owner that put in a lot of money that clearly we decided wasn't enough, but was more than most other clubs were putting in. But what we did have was a new market of 10,000 people, which we had no idea how to capitalise on that.
And it was different, it was vibrant, it set something apart. Unfortunately, it just didn't work, did it?
But we had a template there that shows there's something there that we could do with the sport. Where, you know, we might have to do a lot of groundwork, but there might be an idea of reinvigorating Wales with a concept like that. There might be going into Ireland because some domestic rugby league.
It just has to be done correctly, though. You can't do it off and rely on one single
tomorrow.
owner and therefore the whole thing can.
But the model works because Toronto, in a lot of respects, worked.
But I think
I
forgive my ignorance, but when Melbourne was set up, I think there was a huge amount of input there that went almost from. But it wasn't just reliant on one single owner, was it?
No.
So and because the whole.
But also, it wasn't reliant on relegation.
No.
So if Melbourne needed 3 or 4 years to get the best players to become the best team, they were allowed to do that. Catalan were allowed to do that when they came in. We could have had this year a project on what do we do with Toulouse. Does that enhance Super League to have Toulouse in there, to have 2 teams in France? Does that get us the television deal in France? Does that get us more advertisers because we're seen to be a European-wide sport? Do we have to disenfranchise a team that's in there to allow Toulouse in? Maybe not. Maybe that's part of our plan of how we're going to spread and expand the game.
But all those decisions have to be taken and they have to be led, and I don't think you can constantly consult people.
No.
So
can we reincarnate Maurice Lindsay? Because that's what we need.
The other thing we need is a spokesperson, and I know we've talked about this hundreds of times, but nobody's actively out there talking up the game.
But because you put your neck on the line when you do that,
yep.
So it's high risk from an individual's perspective point of view. But actually, IMG don't have a public voice. No. Would be what I would say. If you've got such a stake in the game, then have a voice in the game, have a representative in the sport where you speak on behalf of the sport. But because it's this constant consultation with everybody, you can't design by committee.
No.
Yes, undertake a consultation, but then make decisions.
Well, bringing in IMG is the only consultation.
And they have to be unpopular ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes. But if it's for the greater good of the game, for the long term, not necessarily the short term, then it has to be the way.
Yeah, Tony's mentioned Lee going to PNG to play a game. So, Derek's going to take over the island. All of it. Even the bits that are not PNG.
That's not agreed yet, but it would be great if they did.
The sport doesn't... When people say the sport needs more Derek Bowmans, they need Derek Bowman's money. Not necessarily Derek Bowman's.
But whether you like him or not, he's charismatic.
Oh, yeah.
So,
but the problem is we're still talking about him and not talking about the players which are going to sell the sport.
We are.
It's great. The Super League podcast, great, they've got a podcast. But too many times on there, it's not current players. We need to be selling these current players and their stories. They've got this platform. We talk about our league, but here's a platform we've got, and we're using it to sell Jason Robinson or whatever. Well, Jason Robinson's got a great story. Everyone knows that. But him isn't going to sell any tickets to any games anymore because he doesn't play. He's of no relevance.
Having said that, things like podcasts, you are speaking again to your own audience. So it's trying to break into new audiences by being on Strictly Come Dancing or whatever it might be. By going on to things like that in the jungle and stuff, you actually raise the sport in the front of people's eyes that would never even look at the sport.
But then you've got to have a way of capitalise on it.
No,
because we won a wheelchair World Cup.
Yeah.
And it hasn't yet been formally announced when they're next playing an international yet. We've got some fantastic ambassadors for the sport and great stories to tell about those people. But again, there's almost a dragging of feet to capitalise on winning. There's a documentary coming out in October about the winning of the World Cup, which is based around 4 of the team predominantly. But what are we doing on the back of that to sell that wheelchair sport to get more money from a television deal, rather than just saying, television people, will you put this on? You don't have to pay for it because you've already given us a television. At what point do you say, right, if you want the women's game, it's worth that in a contract. If you want the wheelchair game, it's worth that in a contract. If you want the men's game, it's worth that. That's why you've got to pay us more, not less. But we don't know the answers to those.
We need a regular, I don't watch it often, but on Steph's Packed Lunch on Channel 4. It's filmed in Leeds, right? They have that audience of people who are on every week. They're all the same people. Why do we just say, can we have...
I've got a friend that's in that audience.
There you go then. Yeah. Why can't we just say, why do we see if they want a rugby league person just to sit there? Don't have to talk about rugby league, they're just there. And Papua New Guinea, very, very clever, very good Squidward. Players themselves need to do more, but under some kind of advisement, so it doesn't end up like the 6 till 8 debate.
I think one of the things IMG have been doing is they have been working with some of the identified players who can be the face of the game, and I think they are teaching them social media etiquette and various other things. That is happening. You know, a couple of the players went to, was it the WWE the other week? A couple of players went to somewhere. Was it Grand Prix? Somewhere. But players have now been the golf. Was it the Open Golf? IMG got them tickets.
George was at Wimbledon or something.
Yes. So they are managing to get them into areas where they're not normally seen. But that's a slower process.
They also need to become content creators. They need to do stuff on Instagram, which is on TikTok, on YouTube or whatever. They need to let us into what's it like being a professional rugby league player. What do you do? What do you get up to? They need to be streaming on Twitch and stuff, or just eating Nando's all the time. Which was funny because I was watching Being the Elite, where the wrestlers have been in London, and one of the things they did was went to Nando's because they don't have in America. So here's our behind the scenes life wearing Nando's. It's ridiculous having the Ashes, but having England instead of GBY, says Kevin, because there's no other people. There's no Welsh people. Because they all become English. Morgan Knowles, I put it in the video.
Because Sport England fund it. And that's one of the avenues through which we get our monies these days.
Thanks to the RFL for sending loads of pictures of the players in England kit, because I couldn't make a video out of it, so that was good. Go watch that, because I made it. Did anything actually happen on the pitch? Apart from let's laugh at Catalan's pitch, which is obviously set up by, again, another conspiracy.
Rugby
the French
Union,
Rugby Union, yeah.
They did it.
They nicked all the gold from the French Rugby League in the war.
And now they gave them, they did the Trojan horse.
Yeah.
They said, oh, please use our lawnmower.
Yeah.
We've infected it.
The pitch is actually owned by the council.
Yes.
So it's maintained by the council.
Yes.
So it must be the same council that maintains the rugby union pitch.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, but
You'd have thought they might have moved the game to the rugby union stadium.
I mean, it's still playable, but I mean, I don't know how long it will be playable for if it carries on like it is.
After all the fuss about Wakefield's pitch earlier in the year.
I've been doing a bit of
Remember
Googling.
I'm
not a gardener, by the way.
Big divots coming up.
It looked like the only solution to it is to dig the pitch up.
I think they're planning on doing that anyway.
And
but
to
they
relay
can't, they can't do it before.
Where's Monty
They're
Don?
playing again in a fortnight, and then they'll have home playoffs. So.
The other week I was thinking, when Wigan were losing to Hull, because I obviously I don't pay any attention to anything, I was thinking, Wigan have dropped off, haven't they? And of course they haven't. They're just quietly going on about their business. They're second in the table, and
that was a hell of a performance. I mean, it might have been a boring game, but
to nil the Catalans on home,
but so comprehensively take them apart. You would say that now the league leaders' shield isn't sorted. It probably is between Catalan, Wigan, and Saints. And that reinvigorates the last month of the season for those three teams, which is great. But you also would say that now we're going to put down a marker to say we are actually good enough to win this competition this year.
I put it on Google Translate in French, so but whatever that was that I tweeted the other day, it was we're going to put down a marker. Very impressive performance, and they are second in the table. Who have they got this week? Salford at home on the telly on Friday night. They're just going about their business. I think what's coloured it in my mind is because they lost that semi-final of the Challenge Cup. Everyone's negativity, but it is wide open. St Helens win at Castleford to the surprise of no one. They get to keep Tom Maguire as well. Thanks, Tom, for your help at the start of this programme 5 years ago.
First half, was it 30-0 for Saints?
It was, yeah.
Second half, 4-all. Don't know what that says, other than Castleford must have been pretty woeful in the first half.
Danny Ward go from being like the greatest coach ever to kind of step back a bit this week?
It's good. It may well come down to points difference now, the relegation battle.
Oh, Wakefield did themselves no end of harm, did they? Losing 20-0 at Salford. Losing 20-0 at Salford. Never play well at Salford. Another nil, yeah. I mean, they've got the chasing down Hoyton for the record.
6-0, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the season, 7 the record. The
Couple
great Alt Park Warriors.
Yeah. So that's exciting. Wakefield have got
still scored fewer points than
no.
Scholars.
Oh yeah, we have again now, haven't we? Only they didn't even play this week. They gave up a game and still.
Yeah, but they got none for that.
Yeah, but
246 Wakefield have scored versus 254. 18 games Scholars versus 23 games Wakefield.
People talk about the eyesight of referees, but James can read the screen over there. It just
about.
Yeah, but it's blurred to me. It's all blurred.
If I lean forward, I can.
Kevin says we're going to miss Kai Pierce-Paul next season. He's in the England video as well. Ian says death taxes. Liam Watts gets a ban. I mean, what point do you think if you're Castleford, we're paying you X amount? It's not going to be cheap, is it?
His contract's up at the end of the year. I'd be amazed if they didn't. I mean, again, it's going to depend on what division they're in and what they can afford to offer their players. But you'd have to say that his disciplinary record now is an issue in a contract negotiation.
When did he run out of early?
The guilty
pleas.
pleas.
Early guilty pleas. The other one, the good record. I've got a good record, sir. Madam, whoever. So that's the bottom of the table then, because Wakefield and Castle lost. The teams that probably should have lost it. We talked about Huddersfield and Leeds earlier. Warrington winning at Hull on Saturday afternoon. Again,
stops the rot.
Again, a game you couldn't pay to watch.
I did listen to it on local radio. I can't
Radio Blunderside.
Can't tell you too much about what happened other than Hull weren't very good.
And Hull Car beat Lee 52-10, and
I watched that.
I was going to watch it, and I was
had
at
to
work.
turn it off towards the end.
I was going to watch it, and I just thought, no, it's not point watching this. I'd watched the
again.
We haven't talked about that in a minute.
I just think Lee looked like a team that know they've only got a limited number of players, and they've reached such a mental and physical height. It was always going to be incredibly difficult to keep that going. And Adrian Lamb, quite rightly, stood behind his players and said, you know, I support them and what. But they looked, I mean, they'll probably win this week, but they looked a very tired team to me.
It shows what I've spoke about before on here about the top 6 inches, isn't it?
Yeah.
Basically the same squad,
Yeah.
the same team that played a couple of weeks ago, totally different result, totally different performance. And that just comes back to the mental approach for me.
In 2017,
I also think it's not being able to rotate players, because I think
it's a
if
small
you're a
squad,
coach, you look at your team and you go, there are certain weeks I'm going to have to. That guy's a bit older. I'm not going to get that level of performance out of him every week over 23, 24 weeks and a cup run. So what I need to do is just rotate every couple of. They can't do that.
No.
And that's what's coming back to them. The thing is, they know they're in the playoffs. There's no way they're going to.
There's still a 4-point cushion between.
So
them
what
and
they need
Warrington.
to do is try and again freshen up, manipulate their squad so that the best guys are out there in a month's time and not necessarily next week.
Yeah, I think they've got to have an eye on where they finish.
Yeah.
And then those 1 or 2 games in that playoff series, haven't they?
and whatever happens, I always go back to 2017 in that grand final. That was Castleford's chance. Lee took theirs.
Yeah.
They got to a final and they won the big trophy and they got all the celebrations. And whatever happens from now on, they've got that. That was Super League this week. Before we get on to the championship, we need to mention the big game on Friday night, which was in French, and a draw.
It was
What's that all about? Why did they not?
Fantastic.
What's that faffing around? They go all the way over to France and they get to share a trophy. What's that all about?
Should have gone into Golden Point, but both teams agreed to share the trophy for 6 months.
I'm blaming this on the Olympics when the high jumpers shared the gold medal the other year.
But did you watch it? It was a sensational game.
Brutal, wasn't it? It was absolutely brutal. Superb entertainment. Halifax, it'll still be up on the Catalans YouTube channel, so go back and watch it if you haven't.
And Bruno commentates.
Did the French official from the World Cup final?
I think he was.
He looked like him, didn't he? He looked like him.
It wasn't announced, but there was a guy on the touchline who looked suspiciously like
Was he doing those sort of signals again that he did?
He's officially known as that French official.
Yeah.
But at least now he's gone down in the list of people who are officials making gestures at cup finals down below the head of the Spanish FA. So at least he's got that in his favour. Well, was it 24 all?
32.
32 all. Missed a kick.
But there was a Don Fox moment right at the end that Catalan had a conversion right in front of the post and it hit the crossbar and came out.
Just claimed to be the world champions. Just claimed to be the world champions.
But again, it's a concept that you say, as a sport, whether it's IMG or the RFL or Rugby League Commission, that's the first time really we've had a European Championship where it's been contested by the 2 grand final winners. We're just about to have the UK grand final in a month. We're coming to the last couple of rounds and then we're into the playoffs. Are we already saying to whoever wins that grand final, we can promise you'll be playing, it'll be Catalan again because they've won the French Championship in the meantime, in the European Club Championship. And instead of it being on Catalan Dragons YouTube channel, we're going to already go back to Sky and say, look, as part of the deal, if you now do finally put ink on the contract, that's another game you can have.
That coverage was a step above.
It was great.
With the graphics and everything, it was a step above something on.
A proper commentator, a summariser, replays. It was fabulous. But when do we take that in as a product and say, right, I think the playoffs in the wheelchair are going to be Leeds, Wigan, London Roosters and Halifax. So we'll tell you now, you are playing for the chance to represent your competition in a European Club Challenge.
Well, I mean, being hard-nosed about it, if you've got assets, if you want to call it that, as part of your competition,
build them up.
Then they're there to make money.
And it cost the Halifax team, I think, £4,000 to go over there and play, which 2,000, I think, was part of the wheelchair finances. Well, you look at that and go, for that kind of investment, that's got to be something that we can make bigger than it already currently is.
Yeah.
That's I'm trying to find out if Chantal Krauss made her money yet to play for
Canada,
but I can't find the link. She needs a grand, doesn't she? London Broncos won. They've got a Canadian in their team. They won the Women's Super League South,
which is a fantastic achievement, bearing in mind that Cardiff were going for 3 in a row.
And they're pretty much the Welsh national team. Jonathan Doidge was there.
He was.
There was a dog on the pitch. Oh.
League Express has just been delivered late.
God, Brian, he's getting worse. He's Brian Barlock, isn't he?
Can't trust the post these days. Can you? What are they doing coming at 7:20 at night?
It's well done, London Broncos. Now, I seem to remember at the start of the year, which is a long time ago, that there were talks about how the Women's Super League is going to look next year. Wasn't there talk of having one?
Well, again,
I don't know what that does to that competition.
If we're talking about properties that we might have, and you don't follow the men's expansion route, which has mainly been around the M62 corridor, and you say, well, going forward, we would like London Broncos, who won the Women's Super League South, to be part of Super League 1 or whatever, however you determine the Women's Super League next year. It's already and maybe Cardiff are that close and that they could come in as well. Yes, there's more travel involved, and yes, there might be more expense, but suddenly, and you might say, well, we won't do it this year, but that's an incentive for you in 2 years' time. You've got something else you can sell to a broadcaster, because every week we'll give you a game, and it will have a name like a Cardiff and a London there, and to the unaficionado, St Helens playing London is a bigger deal than St Helens playing Warrington.
How far is St Helens to Barrow?
But if clubs are seriously supporting their women's teams and their wheelchair teams, then that has to be put in as part of their cost.
She's raised so far £790, so she's getting close to a £1,000 target.
Excellent.
So, excellent. I mean, you think someone would be a club or someone would be able to chuck a couple of hundred in to fill that gap, wouldn't you? But it's good that she's representing Canada, because even being in that documentary last year, she's not in England anymore. So. In the Championship, Sheffield Eagles.
I can follow it now.
You've got it, yeah. Sheffield Eagles beat Batley 49-6. But everyone's having a Wembley hangover, it seems, apart from Hull KR.
But Hull KR did.
Yeah.
It's just that they were playing another team that similarly had a
but Sheffield 49-6. They're already starting the come back and do another season Anthony Thackeray thing, because he's supposed to be retiring, but he's got a hat-trick. I need to get a Sheffield Eagles bucket hat. I should have asked our friend to nick one while she was there the other week. But and they're playing Wakefield Trinity women ladies on Sunday. We have ladies in Wakefield, not women. They're doing a programme for that. I'm going to have to get a programme, because it's for the Wakefield. Sheffield are playing against London Broncos. But Sheffield beat Batley. Well done to Sheffield. They've had an up and down season, but they're on the right side of things at the moment. Featherstone beat Keighley, as you'd expect, 36-6. Widnes, they gave their team away on social media the day before or something, and still they beat Halifax 28-26. I don't know what the story is there. There's only some discontent at Widnes, but I don't really know what's going on. So, Widnes fans, let us know what's going on. London beat Whitehaven 34-18, but as Steve Mascot pointed out, some of their fans went to watch the women instead.
Mm-hmm.
Cardiff women, they bring back GB, says Teddy. Oh, we probably can have a Great Britain women's team.
Yeah,
that's probably more feasible.
Yeah,
and Canada with York won at Newcastle 20-6. Swinton lost to Bradford 42-26, and Toulouse beat Barrow 34-10.
But the big result came last Monday
when Barrow
beat Whitehaven in a thriller, 23-22.
And now it's exciting at the bottom of the table.
Well, it is now, because Keighley have got Barrow on Sunday. That's massive.
Yeah, it's a huge game.
That is massive.
Swinton at York, who are
safe.
Yeah. What happened? What happens in League One? What happens to League One? We don't know what happens.
Well, this is the other thing. You know.
So Doncaster play Oldham this week, don't they?
No, we know what. But what,
what happens
with
after
League
this year?
One
Yeah.
now that we've
I
got
see.
a lesser television deal?
Yeah.
But thank you for that. Thank you for the clarification.
What are London Scholars? It was last week a blip because playing away on a Wednesday is difficult. I don't know.
And well done Cornwall for beating
Yes,
Rochdale.
But use the word Heartland.
They don't get much funding as it is as it stands at the moment, do they? So how much less funding?
Exactly, but there will be less because it won't filter down. So will there be a League One next year, or will the best of League One be in an expanded championship?
We're not going to bin off teams like when we got rid of Chorley and Nottingham.
I'm just saying, what's the plan? Because if there is less money, the likelihood is that less isn't going to be taken at the top end. It's going to just not filter down to the bottom end.
Super greed. Everyone should have £1.5 million to.
It's whether it's proportionate as proportionately.
Or how many of those clubs could keep going if they got even like let's say, pick a figure at random because I don't know how much they're getting, but let's say each team in League One is getting £20,000 central funding. If they're suddenly told it's only 10, how many of those clubs will put their hands up and go, we can't survive on that?
Well, I don't know how they survive. For example, if it was 20,000, how you'd survive on that.
Might be 100.
No, I've no idea what it is either. By the way, I've no idea, but it won't be an awful lot of money.
No.
But
so
you're
explain
right.
how the playoffs work.
The playoffs. Well, I had to look myself.
There's a
'cause
graphic
I couldn't
somewhere.
remember. So Doncaster play Oldham.
They do.
In
So
the
Hunslet
qualification.
get the week off.
Yeah, Hunslet get the week off. Doncaster play Oldham in the qualifying game, and Workington play North Wales in the elimination game.
So the winner of Doncaster and Oldham plays
Hunslet, and whoever wins that game goes straight through to the grand final.
The loser plays the winner of Workington and North Wales.
Correct.
The loser of that is eliminated.
Yeah. Clear.
Right. Yeah.
Sorted that
Got it.
out.
It's the old top 5 system, isn't it?
I mean, I wasn't listening, but
Which is a good
It
system.
means that if you finish effectively top, which is
You
what
get
Hunslet
you get a
are
week off.
effectively,
You
you get that week off, and if you win you win your one game, you get another week off.
Yeah.
Which was always a controversial system because it
was.
didn't always mean that you were successful having had 2 games off.
everyone. I was just saying everyone liked the top 5, but we just said everyone didn't like the top 5. But wasn't that the best 4? Well, it certainly wasn't the top 8 because that was crap, wasn't it? But
Well, I think there was controversy around that week off. You effectively got 2 weeks off, didn't
Yeah.
you? With only
So
one
you were
game.
So you're not back
underprepared when
to
you
the-
got to the grand
Yeah,
final.
there was an argument around that. So is there ever a perfect system?
well, someone say first past the post.
We've already got that in League One. That's Dewsbury. They're promoted.
But
So this is for the follow-up, isn't
That
it?
was quite a
And
big,
they got
quite
a
a
trophy.
big win for Doncaster.
we got a trophy
They
this week.
used to.
Where's the 3rd division trophy? There was a 3rd division trophy when we had 3 divisions in the early 90s. So surely Dewsbury should have been given the 3rd division trophy. But where's the 3rd division trophy? Why is the Yorkshire Cup still at Huddersfield? That's yeah.
Maybe they could sell that to get more attention.
What? So the Yorkshire Cup?
Yeah, melt it down.
I don't. They shouldn't own it. Well, not the Regal Trophy. So Cornwall beat Rochdale 18-12 in front
And
of a crowd.
Cornwall
of
have
nothing.
had a better season, which again shows you that
Mhm.
it takes time to
Mhm.
build something. So, do you persevere? Do you say that even if we've only got the Championship next year and League One as it currently stands doesn't exist, Cornwall have to be in the Championship, even though by right they haven't qualified for it? It's all these sort of questions that we should be asking.
Come down to their score on IMG, will it not?
Well, they've got a big area with no one around them.
A lot of it would, if it comes down to funding or lack of central funding, it'll come down to funding of the clubs.
Yeah.
Who's got the money to put up?
Doncaster beat Dewsbury 36-26.
Over 1,000 people.
Dewsbury got their trophy, as mentioned. North Wales beat London Scholars 62-20. Midlands beat Oldham. So great week for the
Which is-
non-Heartlands.
Which is a massive result for Midlands because Oldham made a big thing, rightly so, about going back to Boundary Park. But that is a big result for the Midlands to go to Oldham and turn them over. I know Oldham played in midweek, but
Yeah, it is a big rate. I just wondered whether if Oldham had won,
they would have finished above Doncaster.
would they?
Yeah, because the points difference was
Oh,
better.
okay, right, fair enough. So it did. I was when I was.
No, would they?
Oh, no,
yeah,
they'd be on-
no, 25. They'd be on
Yeah.
27.
That's what I thought when I'd looked earlier on
So,
today.
yeah.
So they,
So it's irrelevant.
but they were relying on Doncaster losing to Dewsbury
Yeah.
and Oldham winning. So I don't know.
So if Doncaster had lost, which could have been feasible, bearing in mind they were playing the best team. And Oldham had then lost to the Hurricanes. That would have been a missed opportunity to go above Doncaster.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do we do? But this is the ongoing question again. I was going to say earlier, we'll be here in 3 years' time saying what we're going to do with the next TV deal, but we're going to be here in 5, 10, however many years' time saying what would you do with the third tier of rugby league? Because you can't have a division where, all right, we'll stick the remaining teams in the Championship. Well, that's not going to work because Featherstone or Toulouse or whoever their equivalent are going to beat London Scorers 200-0 every week.
But Midlands have got a big financial backer. They are clearly improved this year on where they have been. I don't know what the player generation talent pool is like, but clearly the Midlands is an area where we have had a few players that have played at professional level, but they need time.
And you'd suggest that
it's just whether you expand Super League to 14, which takes 2 teams out of the Championship. You bring 2 up from the League One, and then you split League One into regional competition, which is what they do in football, isn't it? I think in rugby union they have a north and a south, or whatever, however you want to split it. But some of those geographical spreads is unbelievable. Cornwall to Workington is
in a division where you get very little money and your players are part time.
And what's the purpose of the competition from the RFL's point of view? If they're not generating money for the game and they're being seen to be taking money away from the game in effect, what's their purpose? Well, if you go back to the TV deal, one argument would be actually each of those clubs has people that are watching the game and may be a subscriber to your sport. So do you really want to lose them from semi-professional competition? Because you potentially face the prospect of those clubs going to the wall completely.
Or Super League goes to 14, the Championship maybe goes to 16 or 20 in 2 conferences of 10.
So we're going back to Ralph Rimmer's.
But you announced that maybe this is what's going to happen next year or the year, well, not next, the year after. And there's your plan, there's your blueprint. That's why people can get excited. And that might be on a drawing board somewhere, but it seems as though it's not.
Netball's got a team in Scotland, hasn't it? Does it?
Yes.
And it's got a team in Wales. That's a long trip, isn't it, for non-professional? Well,
team in Leeds.
Is it professional? Is it semi-professional? What is it?
Semi-professional.
So
I know,
we're asking the same questions.
I think a lot of the players are professional, but the central handout is really low.
We're asking the same questions of League One as you could ask of netball, of speedway, of ice hockey, of basketball.
But netball,
how do they?
Netball have come up with an offer that Sky have got excited about, which, funnily enough, is IMG backed.
So we just need more rich people.
No, I just think you need to come up with a competition that
people want to see. Well, I mean,
that
Kevin,
says, the elite level will draw down the money for everybody else. So all we know is there are 8 netball teams. I'm sure there are. I'm sure there's hundreds of community netball teams.
But we don't know.
I'm sure netball's played throughout the country on a weekly basis. But what is bringing people into netball and increasing participation is they now have a Super League. And they have a franchised Super League with 8 teams, some of whose names are recognisable outside of even netball, like Saracens and Leeds Rhinos. And they seem to be, they've just got to the final of a World Cup for the first time, which is not just to do with the structure of the sport, but clearly it's generating sufficient talent. It's attracting players from other competitions.
So what you're saying is it's all about your top tier, and
it has to be, because that's what gets you
the
money,
right, and people
whether
get
you like
offended.
it or not.
People get offended though if you support a club in League One that it's being disrespectful.
But then that
it's not.
club
It's just
in
the
League
reality.
One has to have an aspiration to be good enough to be included in whatever the top tier is, but it's going to take years.
Yeah. Kevin's mentioned getting the press on side, which I don't know if that's possible or not or whatever. And he does say that the thing is netball has the media on side. At Wembley this year, I can't remember seeing many non-rugby league journalists that you would tend to see in
feature writers
recent years. And I don't know if that was, I don't know how you get them there, or if there's just no story for them to cover or whatever. Jonathan Lew from The Guardian's been there for the last few years, so he wasn't there this year, he probably had something more important to do. But of his ilk, that kind of writer.
The problem was for that, the Premier League season kicked off that weekend, so all the general sports writers would have been, we need to see how Arsenal are going to start the year or whatever, or we're at Twickenham, because again we competed directly with a rugby union game, which nobody could have known, because I don't think that friendly was in in the calendar.
We need to get players rapping at the Challenge Cup final like they did at the wrestling. Rapping and making jokes about Prince Andrew. That's
Anyway,
what we need.
happy birthday, Rugby League.
Happy birthday,
We
Rugby.
love you to bits.
Happy birthday.
We
this
just
birthday.
want you to be the best you can be.
And we'll be back on Monday.
Can we have some cake yet?
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
I'm
time.
hungry.
Let's go. Thanks for watching. Thanks to everyone who's helped us over the past 5 years. We need to go. Not the
We need
thing.
to eat cake. We don't